High above the valleys of southern Europe, another day begins for one of the world's greatest aerial specialists, the Alpine. Unlike many birds that rely on frequent landings, the Alpine Swift is built for endurance. Once airborne, invisible rivers of rising air carry the bird effortlessly upward. By exploiting these thermals, the Alpine Swift The distinctive crescent-shaped wings are perfectly adapted for fast, efficient flight, allowing the bird to travel vast distances. Every meal is caught on the wing. Tiny insects drifting through the mountain air provide enough energy to sustain one of the most... For the Alpine Swift, the mountain landscape is not a barrier, but a network of invisible highways shaped by wind, warmth, and rising air. Extreme maneuverability is essential in mountainous terrain, where changing air currents demand constant adjustments measured in fractions of a second. From the bird's perspective, the sky is filled with invisible rising air lifts the body while drifting edges. Although often seen alone, Alpine Swifts frequently share the same favorable air currents, each bird benefiting from the endless highs. For the Alpine Swift, the day has only just begun. With the mountains beneath and the endless sky above, every rising current is carefully read and exploited. The less the bird flaps its wings, the more energy it preserves. Altitude is constantly exchanged for speed. Every graceful descent positions the Alpine Swift exactly where drifting insect clouds are moving. Hunting in open air depends less on speed than on precision. Tiny adjustments in direction allow the bird to collect dozens of insects. The famous crescent-shaped wing is more than beautiful. Its slender design delivers remarkable lift, efficiency. Shared skies do not require coordinated flight. Each swift responds independently to the invisible architecture of moving air surrounding the mountains. Although capable of remaining airborne for extraordinary periods, Alpine Swifts occasionally pause on sheer rock faces. Rest is brief. Within seconds, the bird returns to the element where it spends nearly every waking hour, the open sky. To the Alpine Swift, rising air is as visible as a mountain trail. Each invisible current becomes another pathway across. Beyond the cliffs, the aerial journey continues across open mountain landscapes, where wind, terrain, and sunlight combine to... Morning has carried the Alpine Swift across cliffs, valleys, and invisible rivers of rising air. Yet for this remarkable tree, by midday, the warming landscape produces powerful thermals. The Alpine Swift now glides farther while expending even... Insects lifted by rising warm air become a moving buffet suspended above the mountains, allowing the Alpine Swift to feed Rather than fighting gravity, the Alpine Swift allows the mountain itself to provide lift, turning invisible columns of warm air into... Mountain winds rarely remain constant. Every second, the bird makes microscopic corrections that keep its flight smooth, balanced, and shared air currents often attract multiple swifts. Rather than competing, each bird quietly exploits its own invisible pathway through the sky. Moments like these demonstrate why the Alpine Swift is considered one of nature's finest endurance flyers. Feeding rarely requires dramatic chases. Precision, timing, and careful positioning allow the bird to collect dozens of insects. As warm air continues to rise throughout the afternoon, clouds begin forming above the peaks, reshaping the invisible high. What appears to us as a vast wilderness is simply another stretch of open sky for a bird perfectly adapted to life in constant motion. Hour after hour, the Alpine Swift remains exactly where evolution shaped it to be, high above the mountains. As the afternoon warms the mountains, invisible rivers of rising air become even stronger, allowing the Alpine Swift. Every feeding opportunity is seamlessly woven into the journey. Hunting is not a separate activity, but a continuous part of remaining airborne. Every cliff reshapes the wind in unique ways, creating invisible pathways that experienced swifts learn to recognize and use. With stability in turbulent air is achieved through countless tiny adjustments, each one almost invisible yet essential for efficient flight. Even when many Alpine Swifts share the same sky, each bird remains an independent master of the wind. Flying close to the terrain allows the bird to exploit changing airflows generated by every ridge, cliff, and rocky outcrop along its route. Success comes from efficiency rather than pursuit. The Alpine Swift harvests the sky itself. By late afternoon, every thermal has become stronger and more predictable, allowing the Alpine Swift to remain aloft with astonishing efficiency. To human eyes, the sky appears empty, but for the Alpine Swift, it is filled with invisible highways shaped by heat, terrain, and moving air. Feeding on the wing has become second nature. Every kilometer traveled also becomes another opportunity to narrow passes compress the wind into powerful streams, demanding constant precision from a bird that spends its life navigating moving air. Each rising column of warm air extends the journey, allowing the Alpine Swift to exchange patience for altitude. Short pauses like this are rare, serving only as brief moments of recovery before the endless sky calls once again. Within moments, the brief pause is over. The Alpine Swift returns to the place where it is most perfectly adapted to live, the open air. As afternoon clouds continue to develop, the mountain atmosphere becomes even more dynamic, constantly reshaping the even as the day begins to cool, the sky continues to provide enough nourishment for a bird whose entire existence revolves around life in flight. Every kilometer traveled now requires even less effort, as the bird skillfully links one invisible current. Even during the final hours of daylight, the sky continues to provide the nourishment needed for one of nature's most enduring flyers. The elegant sickle-shaped wing remains the defining feature of this remarkable bird, allowing exceptional control even as evening approaches, each remaining thermal becomes increasingly valuable, carrying the Alpine Swift effortlessly toward the final. Although capable of extraordinary endurance, even the greatest aerial travelers occasionally pause to watch the changing sky. One final launch reminds us that flight is not simply movement for the Alpine Swift. It is the defining rhythm of its entire existence. As daylight fades, the mountains become quieter, yet the sky remains a place of effortless movement for one of the world's finest gliders. After spending nearly the entire day suspended between earth and sky, the Alpine Swift finally turns toward the rocky sanction. From dawn until dusk, the Alpine Swift has revealed a life shaped almost entirely by flight. As the last thermals begin to fade, the Alpine Swift adapts effortlessly, blending powerful wing beats with gracefulness. Even as daylight disappears, the Alpine Swift continues navigating the landscape with remarkable confidence, guided by light. After covering enormous distances without ever truly leaving the sky, the Alpine Swift finally begins returning to the. For a brief moment, the endless traveler pauses. The cliff offers safety, but only until another sunrise calls it back into the air. Though motionless now, the Alpine Swift carries the memory of hundreds of kilometers flown above mountains shaped by wind, warmth, and time. Size has never limited this extraordinary bird. Within a body weighing little more than a few dozen grams exists one of the greatest endurance flyers on Earth. Tomorrow the journey will begin again, following invisible currents that have guided Alpine Swifts across mountains for countless generations.